A millionaire who abandoned his pregnant ex at the altar meets her 6 years later in a park with triplets. Upon seeing the children's faces, he is left speechless. They were identical to him. But her reaction upon seeing him reveals something even more shocking. The euphoric scream of children on the roller coaster tore through the air, while Liam watched the controlled chaos of the amusement park with a forced smile. His fingers drummed impatiently on the chrome railing, his luxury watch reflecting the afternoon sun, as he mentally calculated how much longer he would have to endure that family outing. That's when the world stopped. Amidst the colorful and noisy crowd, 3 identical little faces, perfect copies of his own, ran in circles around a woman who should never have reappeared in his life, Maya. Time froze, his heart raced, and the blood in his veins ran cold. The children he had abandoned before they were even born were there, just a few feet away, and the empire, carefully built on secrets, threatened to collapse in seconds. Liam felt the hand of Khloe, his wife of 4 years, squeeze his. He wore casual clothes that couldn't hide his air of wealth, the luxury watch on his wrist, and Italian shoes that looked out of place in the park's relaxed environment. Every few steps before that fateful moment, Liam would discreetly check his phone, unable to completely disconnect from business, even on a Sunday. "Can we at least pretend we're having fun?" Khloe asked, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "You promised today would be different." Liam put his phone in his pocket and smiled mechanically. "I'm sorry. I promise I'm 100% present now." Words that would be lost in the wind in a matter of seconds, when his entire world froze before the sight that appeared a few feet away. It was as if time stood still. First, Liam saw the children. 3 identical boys, approximately 5 years old, running in circles around a park bench. His heart quickened as he noticed their smiles, the dimples on their cheeks, the almond-shaped eyes, features so familiar it was like looking at photographs of his own childhood. Then, his gaze moved to the woman who got up from the bench, lovingly calling the boys Maya. The air escaped from Liam's lungs, as if he had been punched. Maya, his ex-fiancée, the woman he had abandoned at the altar 5 years ago, even though he knew she was pregnant. The woman he had traded for Khloe in a decision that he had convinced himself had been purely rational. The blood in his veins ran cold. Triplets. 3 identical children who were his exact copy. For all these years, he had limited himself to sending monthly checks through his lawyers, without ever having seen or maintained any contact with the children he knew existed. It was easier that way, he had convinced himself. Less complicated, less painful. A simple equation of financial responsibility without emotional involvement. But now, seeing those faces, something inside him collapsed. "Liam, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," Khloe asked, following the direction of his gaze. It was at that moment that Maya saw him. Their eyes met across the crowd, and time seemed to stretch infinitely in that instant. The look they exchanged was loaded with contradictory emotions. Surprise, hurt, guilt, and something else that Liam couldn't name. "Who is that woman?" Khloe insisted, her voice now tinged with suspicion. Liam felt a cold sweat run down his back. How to explain? How to tell his wife, right then and there, that that woman was his ex-fiancée, that the 3 boys were his children, and that all the time they had been together, he had hidden their existence. "An old acquaintance," he murmured, looking away. "Let's go somewhere else." But it was too late. Maya had approached, holding the hands of 2 of the boys, while the 3rd clung to her leg. Up close, the resemblance was even more impressive. It was as if Liam were looking at miniature versions of himself. "Hello, Liam," Maya said, her voice surprisingly calm. "It's been a while." Her eyes, which had once shone with love for him, now studied him with a mixture of caution and determination. She was different, stronger, more self-assured. The years had been kind to her. Her face retained the beauty that had attracted him from the very beginning. But now there was something more, a firmness, a serenity that came from someone who had faced storms and survived. Maya, was all he could say, feeling the weight of Khloe's gaze on him. One of the boys looked up, curious. "Mommy, who is this man?" Liam's world collapsed with that simple question. They didn't know who he was. Of course they wouldn't know. How could they? He had been just a ghost in their lives, a name on a check, an absence. Maya hesitated for a moment, but answered gently, "This is Liam, a friend of Mommy's from a long time ago." Friend. The word fell like a stone in Liam's stomach. That's what he had become. A stranger, a distant acquaintance, someone who didn't even deserve to be recognized as a father. "And who is this?" Maya asked. Looking at Khloe. "My wife Khloe," Liam replied, each word feeling like a confession of guilt. The flicker of recognition in Maya's eyes was almost imperceptible, but it was there. She knew exactly who Khloe was, the woman for whom she had been traded, the reason Liam had left her alone, pregnant, on their wedding day. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Maya said, with a politeness that Liam knew he didn't deserve. Khloe looked from Maya to the children, and then to Liam. The understanding began to form in her eyes, a growing suspicion that threatened to explode at any moment. "Are these your children?" Khloe asked Maya, her voice controlled but trembling. Maya nodded. "Yes, my triplets. Oliver, Jack, and Noah. Boys, say hello." The children waved shyly, looking with curiosity at the strangers. Liam couldn't take his eyes off them. Every gesture, every expression seemed to echo something inside him. Those little hands he had never held, those voices he had never heard call out for a father, those smiles he had never provoked. "They are lovely," Khloe commented, but her tone was distant, her mind clearly processing the obvious similarities between the children and her husband. An uncomfortable silence hung between the adults, while the children, oblivious to the tension, began to get restless. "Mommy, can we go on the roller coaster now?" one of the boys asked. Jack, Liam thought, although he wasn't sure how to tell them apart. "In a minute, dear," Maya replied, without taking her eyes off Liam. "Actually, we were leaving. It was interesting to see you again, Liam." There was so much hidden in those words, contained anger, unasked questions, silent accusations. Liam wanted to say something, anything, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. "Maya, he began, but she shook her head slightly. "Not here, not now," she said softly. Then, pulling a card from her bag, she handed it to him. "If you want to talk, you know where to find me." Liam took the card automatically, feeling the weight of that small piece of paper as if it were an anchor, an email address, and a phone number. The first bridges to a world he had deliberately avoided for 5 years. "Let's go, boys," Maya called softly, turning to leave. The triplets followed her obediently, their little legs moving quickly to keep up with their mother's pace. Liam watched as they walked away, feeling as if a part of him was being torn away. He wanted to run after them, tell the boys who he really was, beg Maya for forgiveness, explain. But what could he explain? How to justify 5 years of absence? When he finally managed to look away, he found Khloe staring at him. Her eyes were teary, not with sadness, but with contained fury. "Who are they really, Liam?" she asked, her voice dangerously low. The world around them continued to spin, the music playing, the children laughing, the carousels turning in endless circles. But for Liam, everything had stopped. The house of cards he had built was about to collapse. "Let's go home," he said, avoiding her accusatory gaze. "I'll explain everything there." "No," Khloe planted her feet on the ground. You're going to tell me now. Those children, they're yours, aren't they? They look exactly like you. The weight of 5 years of lies and omissions fell on Liam's shoulders. Around them, families passed, happy in their normalcy, while his own world imploded in slow motion. Yes, he finally admitted, the word escaping like a painful sigh. They're my children. Khloe stepped back, as if she had been slapped. Your children? And when exactly were you planning on telling me about this? After how long, Liam? Weren't 5 years enough to find the right time? Each word was like a blade, precise and sharp, cutting through the last layers of protection he had built around himself. I was going to tell you, he tried, knowing how empty that excuse sounded. I just never found the right time. The right time? Khloe repeated, incredulous. And that woman, she's Maya, my ex-fiancée. Khloe's face paled. The same Maya you said you broke up with months before we met? The same Maya who, from what I'm seeing, was pregnant when you left her. Liam didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. You left her pregnant? From me? Khloe's voice trembled. Horror and indignation mixed in every syllable. And never in 4 years of marriage did you think that would be relevant enough to mention? The people around them began to notice the argument, casting curious glances in their direction. Liam tried to take Khloe's arm, to guide her to a more private place, but she pulled away from his touch. Don't touch me, she said, tears now streaming freely. I don't know who you are. I thought I knew you, but I was clearly wrong. The man I married would not be able to abandon his own children, to hide their existence, to build our life on lies. The words hit Liam with brutal force, because they contained the truth he had tried to ignore for so long. What kind of man does that? What kind of father never met his own children? What kind of husband hides something so fundamental from his wife? Looking at the card in his hand, Liam felt the weight of all the choices he had made, all the paths not taken, all the responsibilities he had avoided. And for the first time in 5 years, he allowed himself to truly feel the magnitude of his cowardice. I'm going to my sister's house, Khloe announced, wiping her tears away angrily. Don't follow me, don't call me, I need to think. She turned to leave, but stopped and looked at Liam one last time, her eyes revealing a deep pain. You know what's most ironic? For years I begged you to have children, and you always said you weren't ready, that you wanted to wait for the right time, and all this time. She didn't finish the sentence. There was no need. With one last devastated look, Khloe walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Liam alone with the weight of his choices. Maya's card burning in his hand like a promise or a threat that nothing in his life would be the same from that day on. The businessman who had built an empire based on calculated decisions now found himself completely lost, without a map or a compass. The man who micromanaged every aspect of his life was now facing the chaos he himself had sown. And as the sun began to set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the amusement park, Liam knew he was only at the beginning of a journey that would force him to confront not only his past, but the very essence of who he had become. The aftermath. The living room clock read 3 in the morning when Liam finally got home. The mansion, with its high ceilings and endless corridors, had never seemed so empty. He left the key on the marble console, the metallic clinking echoing in the oppressive silence. Without turning on the lights, he went to the bar and poured himself a generous shot of whiskey. The amber liquid burned his throat, but it couldn't erase the images that haunted him. 3 pairs of eyes, identical to his, looking at him with innocent curiosity. His children. The word reverberated in his mind like a bell, insistent and impossible to ignore. Parents were distant figures in his own childhood, an absent father consumed by work, and an emotionally unavailable mother, concerned with appearances and social status. He had grown up promising himself that he would be different, that when he had children, he would be present. What a cruel irony that now, at 38, he discovered that he had become exactly what he swore to avoid, and even worse. Even his phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Khloe, finally responding to his dozens of calls. "I need space. Don't look for me for a few days. When I'm ready to talk, I'll contact you." A short, direct message, with no room for argument. Typical of her, a woman who knew how to set boundaries, one of the qualities that had initially attracted him, now working against him. Liam sank into the leather sofa, his phone slipping from his hand. In an automatic gesture, his other hand found the card Maya had given him. He examined it under the dim light coming through the windows. A simple white card, with a phone number and an email address. So small, and yet containing the power to rewrite his entire life. In the office, the computer turned on with a soft hum. Liam typed Maya's name into the search engine, something he had never allowed himself to do in the last 5 years. He found her easily, marketing director of a medium-sized company, some photos at corporate events, an impeccable professional profile, no public social media. Maya had always been discreet. Continuing the search, he added triplets to the terms. A local newspaper article appeared. Teacher overcomes challenges and celebrates triplets' kindergarten graduation. The photo showed Maya radiant, surrounded by the 3 boys dressed in small gowns and mortarboards. His children looked happy, healthy. They had grown up without him, and yet they had thrived. A knot formed in his throat. What right did he have now to enter their lives, to disturb the balance that Maya, alone, had established? It would be pure selfishness on his part. However, as the sun began to rise, painting the sky pink and gold, something inside Liam also awakened. A strange, almost forgotten sense of genuine responsibility. Not the calculated responsibility of signing monthly checks, but something deeper, more visceral. The desire to know his children, to hear their voices, to find out who they were. 3 days passed without news from Khloe. Liam plunged into work, as he always did when he needed to avoid facing his emotions. But for the first time in his successful career, he couldn't concentrate. During an important meeting with investors, he found himself drawing 3 little stick figures in the margin of his notepad. In the middle of a call with his CFO, he completely lost the thread of the conversation, distracted by the memory of the boys' faces. "Are you okay, Liam?" asked Robert, his personal assistant for over 8 years, the only person who dared to question his behavior. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," he replied automatically, the lie coming easily after years of practice in hiding emotions. But this time, the words sounded false even to his own ears. On the morning of this 4th day, Liam finally mustered the courage. He typed a message to the number on the card. "Maya, it's Liam. I would like to talk about the boys if you're willing." The response came almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for this contact. "Cafe Meridiano. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll come alone." It was that simple. No recrimination, no demands, no display of emotion. Just a place, a time, and a condition. Maya had always been pragmatic. When Khloe finally returned home, 5 days after the incident at the park, she found Liam sitting on the front steps, waiting. His eyes were marked by deep, dark circles, his beard unshaven, his usually impeccable hair now disheveled. "Can I enter my own house?" she asked, her voice cold but not hostile. "Just tired." "Khloe, Not now," she interrupted, raising her hand. "I need a shower and a few hours of decent sleep. We'll talk later." Liam nodded, letting her pass. As he watched his wife go up the stairs, he realized how much he had gotten used to being in control. Of his business, of his relationships, of every aspect of his meticulously planned life. Now, all that control was slipping through his fingers like fine sand. That night, lying on opposite sides of the king-size bed. The silence between them weighed more than any word. It was Khloe who finally broke it. "Why did you never tell me?" The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Liam stared at the ceiling, where the shadows danced. "At first I was afraid of losing you," he admitted, the painful truth emerging for the first time. Then, the more time passed, the harder it became to find the right time. And then, I think I convinced myself it wasn't necessary, that the monthly checks were enough to fulfill my obligation. "Obligation?" Khloe repeated, turning to face him. "They're your children, Liam, not an insurance policy or a corporate debt. They're 3 flesh and blood children who have your DNA, your face, probably your talents and your flaws too." Each word was like a needle, precise and painful, piercing the last layers of self-justification that he had built over the years. "I'm meeting with her tomorrow," Liam said after a long silence. "With Maya." Khloe briefly closed her eyes. "What do you hope to achieve with that?" "I don't know," he replied honestly. "Maybe to understand, maybe to get to know them. And then," the question remained unanswered. The then was an unknown territory, terrifying in its infinite possibilities. The next morning, Liam deliberately chose casual clothes, jeans, and a simple light blue shirt. None of the impeccably cut suits that served as his armor in the corporate world. He arrived at the cafe 20 minutes before the scheduled time, choosing a discreet table in the back. Cafe Meridiano was an unpretentious place, with wooden tables and wicker chairs, very different from the refined restaurants he frequented for business lunches. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the air, mixing with the smell of sourdough bread baking in the open oven. When Maya entered, punctually at 2 in the afternoon, Liam recognized her immediately, even without the triplets by her side. She looked different in the daylight, away from the chaotic atmosphere of the park, more mature, more serene. She wore beige linen pants and an aquamarine blouse, her brown hair pulled back in an unpretentious bun. No jewelry other than small pearl earrings and a simple watch. Always elegant, without ostentation. Another trait that had attracted him years ago. She spotted him and walked purposefully to the table. Liam stood up, uncertain whether to extend his hand or just nod. He opted for a simple hello, which sounded inadequate even to his own ears. "Hello, Liam," she replied, sitting down. Her dark, honey-colored eyes that he remembered well studied him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping much," he admitted. A brief silence ensued, broken by the approaching waitress. Maya ordered a cappuccino, Liam a double espresso. "Are the boys okay?" he asked when they were alone again, the question coming out more hesitant than he intended. A shadow of a smile passed across Maya's lips. "They are, as restless as ever. Oliver caught a slight cold, but he's getting better. Jack won a math competition at school last week, and Noah won't stop talking about the rocket he's building for the science fair." But each piece of information was like a small dagger, moments of his children's lives that Liam had missed, achievements he hadn't witnessed, difficulties he hadn't helped overcome. "Do they know about me?" The question that had tormented him since the meeting in the park finally escaped. Maya took a sip of her cappuccino before answering, buying herself some time. "They know they have a biological father who lives far away. I told them you had to leave to take care of important business." Liam felt his stomach sink. It was a white lie, much kinder than the truth, which was that he had deliberately chosen not to be a part of their lives. "Why?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Why didn't you tell them the truth? That I abandoned them?" Maya studied him for a long moment before answering. "It wasn't for you, Liam. It was for them. What good would it do for 3 small boys to know that their biological father chose not to know them? What kind of start to life would that be?" The answer hit him hard. While he spent the last 5 years pretending the triplets didn't exist, Maya not only raised the boys, but also protected the image they had of him. Not because he deserved such consideration, but because it was what was best for the children. "I'm sorry," he said, the words completely inadequate to express the depth of his regret. "For what I did to you. To all of you." "I'm not interested in your apologies, Liam," Maya replied, without hostility. "Just stating a fact. What's done is done. I built a life for myself and the boys. A good life." "Are you married now?" he asked, realizing he hadn't checked that detail in his online research. "Yes, for 2 years. To Alex. He loves the boys as if they were his own." There was a softness in her voice when she mentioned her husband, a note of genuine contentment that Liam had never heard during the years they were together. "And he knows about me?" "Of course he does. I don't build relationships on secrets." The jab wasn't subtle, but it also wasn't said with malice. Liam lowered his eyes to his coffee, now cold and forgotten. "What do you want, Maya? I mean, from me?" "I don't want anything from you," she answered calmly. "The checks you send are more than enough for the boys' financial needs. We've done well without your presence so far." "Then why did you agree to meet me?" Maya leaned slightly forward, her eyes now fixed on his. "Because I saw your face when you looked at them in the park. It was the first time in all these years that I saw something other than calculating coldness in your eyes. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, you were finally ready to be more than a name on a check." Her words hit him like a physical blow. There was no accusation in her tone, just a frank observation. And that somehow made it all worse. "I want to get to know them," Liam said, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. "If you'll allow me." Maya studied him for a long moment, as if trying to assess his sincerity. "This isn't something that happens overnight, Liam. You can't just show up in their lives as the father they never knew and expect everything to magically resolve itself. They're 5 years old, but they're not fools. They're going to ask questions." "I understand," he nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility he was taking on. "How do you suggest we do this?" "First, I need to talk to Alex. He's part of their family now, and his opinion matters. Then, if he agrees, we can arrange a casual meeting. Maybe a picnic in the park. Something simple and without pressure." Liam felt a wave of gratitude for Maya's sensible approach. She was putting the children's needs first, as she had always done. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm not doing this for you," she clarified. "I'm doing it for the boys. They deserve to know their origin, to understand where they came from. But listen carefully, Liam. If this is just a passing whim of yours, some kind of midlife crisis or an attempt to clear your conscience, stop now. Because entering their lives just to disappear again would be unforgivable." The seriousness on her face made it clear that it was not an empty threat. Liam felt the weight of those words, the monumental responsibility he was considering taking on. "It's not a whim," he assured. "I can't explain what happened to me in that park, but something changed, something fundamental." Maya just nodded, without showing whether she believed him or not. Finishing her coffee, she picked up her bag, preparing to leave. "I'll contact you after I talk to Alex. It might take a few days." Liam stood up when she did, an automatic reflex of good manners. "Maya," he called as she was turning to leave. Are they happy?" A genuine smile lit up her face for the first time since she had arrived. "Very. They are wonderful children, Liam. Noisy, curious, sometimes exhausting, but incredibly wonderful." With those words, she was gone, leaving Liam with a confusing mix of emotions. Regret for the lost time, fear of the uncertain future, but also, for the first time in a long time, a small flame of hope. When he got home that afternoon, he found Khloe sitting on the balcony, an open but unread book in her lap. Her face showed clear signs that she had been crying, but there was also a determination in her eyes that Liam knew well. "How did it go?" she asked simply. She agreed to think about letting me meet the boys, he replied, sitting in the chair next to her. She needs to talk to her husband first. She's married. Alex, Khloe noted. Not a question, but a thoughtful observation. She moved on. Yes. A heavy silence fell between them, full of unspoken questions and decisions yet to be made. And us, Liam? Khloe finally asked, her voice soft but firm. Where do we go from here? Liam looked at the horizon, where the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky with shades of orange and red. It was a question for which he still had no answer, but for the first time in his life he was willing to face the uncertainty head-on. Building a bridge. The message from Maya arrived 5 days later, when Liam was starting to lose hope. A simple Sunday 10 a.m., Parque das Magnolias, next to the lake. The boys will be there. Liam read and reread those words, his heart racing each time. He was about to meet his children, not as a stranger glimpsed by chance in an amusement park, but as someone who could, perhaps one day, be a part of their lives. She responded, he told Khloe, who was having coffee on the balcony, the newspaper open but ignored in front of her. In the last few days, they had established a fragile truce, sleeping in the same bed, sharing meals, exchanging necessary words. But the intimacy that united them was suspended, hanging in an uncertain limbo. When? Khloe asked, without raising her eyes from her cup. Sunday. She nodded slowly. Do you want me to go with you? The question caught Liam by surprise. He had not considered that possibility. Khloe, would you like to go? She finally looked at him, her eyes reflecting a complex mix of emotions. I don't know, Liam. Part of me wants to meet these children who are my husband's children. Another part fears that it might be too much to process right now. Liam sat down beside her, carefully, maintaining a respectful distance. I think the first meeting should be just me, so as not to confuse them even more. Makes sense, she agreed, a note of relief in her voice. After a moment, she added, Have you thought about what you're going to tell them? How are you going to introduce yourself? The question hit him like a punch to the stomach. No. He hadn't thought about that. How would you introduce yourself to 3 5-year-old boys who didn't know he was their biological father? Maya said they know they have a biological father who lives far away, he replied slowly. I imagine she'll introduce me as that father, but I don't know exactly how that's going to happen. Khloe briefly closed her eyes. This is going to change everything, you know. I know, Liam admitted, the reality of the situation weighing on his shoulders. But I can't go back now. I don't want to go back. The days leading up to Sunday passed in an anxious blur. At the office, Liam was distracted, getting lost in meetings, forgetting to return important calls. His executives exchanged worried glances, never having seen the CEO so unfocused. On Friday, when he got home, he found Khloe in the closet, some open suitcases on the bed. Are you leaving? He asked, a sudden panic tightening his chest. Khloe shook her head. Just for a few days. I'm going to the spa on the coast. I need to think, Liam. I understand, he said, although he didn't fully understand. Part of him wanted to protest, to beg her to stay. But another part, the part that was slowly beginning to recognize the impact of his actions on others, knew that she deserved that space. I'll be back on Tuesday, she added, closing one of the suitcases. Maybe by then, things will be clearer in my head. On Sunday, Liam woke up before sunrise, after a night of restless sleep. He spent a disproportionate amount of time choosing what to wear, wanting to look casual, but not sloppy. He opted for jeans and a simple light blue shirt. Simple, but of quality. On the way to the park, he stopped at a bookstore that opened early and bought 3 different children's books after asking the saleswoman for help on what 5-year-old boys might like. He also bought a box of fine chocolates for Maya, not as a romantic gesture, but out of gratitude for what she was allowing. Parque das Magnolias was quiet that Sunday morning, with only a few morning runners and people walking their dogs. Liam arrived 20 minutes early, unable to control his anxiety. He sat on a bench overlooking the lake, the gifts next to him, watching the ducks that glided peacefully across the water. Exactly. At 10 o'clock, he saw Maya approaching from one of the park's trails, holding hands with two of the boys, while the third ran a little ahead, chasing a butterfly. Next to her, a tall, broad-shouldered man walked, with a well-trimmed beard and a serious expression. Alex, Liam presumed, feeling an unexpected wave of jealousy at seeing how comfortable the boys seemed in the presence of that man. He was the one who had been there for their first steps, their first words, their first days of school. Liam stood up, his legs suddenly heavy. Maya spotted him and said something to the boys, who looked in his direction with evident curiosity. The boy who was ahead ran back to his mother, clinging to her leg while he studied the stranger with suspicious eyes, the same eyes as Liam. "Hello," Liam said when the group approached, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. "Hello, Liam," Maya replied, her tone neutral, but not hostile. "Oliver, Jack, and Noah," she pointed to each of them. "And this is my husband, Alex." Alex extended his hand, his grip firm and direct. His eyes, meanwhile, conveyed a clear message. "I'm here to protect my family." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Liam said, looking at the triplets with an emotion he could barely contain. Up close, the resemblance was even more impressive. The same shape of the eyes, the same slightly square chin, even the way they tilted their heads slightly while watching something with interest. There was an awkward moment of silence, broken by Maya. "Boys, remember when we talked about your biological father? The person who helped Mommy make you?" The three nodded, looking from Liam to Maya with different degrees of understanding. "This is Liam. He is your biological father." Oliver, who seemed the most confident, stepped forward. "You're the man in the baby pictures?" Liam looked at Maya, confused. "I showed them some old photos," she explained, "from when we were together before they were born." "Yes," Liam replied, crouching down to be at the boy's height. "It's me. Why do you live so far away?" Jack asked, still holding Maya's hand, but with curiosity stamped on his little face. Liam felt the weight of that simple question. All his education in elite universities, his ability to navigate multi-billion-dollar negotiations, his talent for corporate speeches, none of that had prepared him to answer a 5-year-old boy about why he abandoned his pregnant mother. "I had to leave because of work," he said finally, repeating the story Maya had told. "But I'm very happy to meet you now." Noah, who seemed more reserved, hid partially behind Alex's leg, watching Liam with a mixture of curiosity and distrust. "I brought some gifts," Liam said, indicating the packages on the bench, books, and chocolates for their mother. Maya accepted the chocolates with a polite thank you, while the boys were excited at the mention of gifts. Soon they were sitting on the grass, tearing open the wrapping paper with childish enthusiasm. "Dinosaurs!" exclaimed Oliver, showing his book. "I love dinosaurs!" "Space!" Jack hugged his book about the solar system. Noah opened his more carefully, a book about forest animals, and murmured a thank you, almost inaudible, still not looking directly at Liam. Maya and Alex sat on a nearby bench, watching the interaction carefully, while Liam tried to start a conversation with the boys about their books. Oliver, the most talkative, was soon explaining to Liam that a T-Rex, in fact, couldn't roar like in the movies, but probably made sounds more like a crocodile's. Jack wanted to know if Liam had ever seen a real rocket, and Noah just turned the pages of his book, occasionally looking at Liam, when he thought he wasn't being watched. It was strange and wonderful, awkward and natural at the same time. Liam felt completely out of his element. He who was always in control, always knew exactly what to say and how to act. Now, sitting on the grass of a park on a Sunday morning, trying to connect with 3 small versions of himself. He was totally vulnerable. An hour passed quickly. Maya approached, informing them that it was time to go. The boys had swimming lessons at noon. Liam felt a pang of disappointment, but nodded, understanding that this first meeting should not be prolonged. "Can we see each other again?" he asked, the question directed at both Maya and the boys. It was Alex who answered. "We'll see how things evolve, one step at a time." Liam nodded, accepting the answer. When they said goodbye, Noah, the quietest of the 3, surprised everyone by asking, "Are you going to go far away again?" The question hit Liam like an arrow, piercing him directly in the heart. He crouched down again, looking into the boy's eyes, and answered with a certainty he didn't know he possessed. "No, Noah, I won't go far away anymore." The boy studied his face for a moment, as if evaluating the sincerity of that promise, before nodding slightly and running to catch up with his brothers. Liam watched as the group walked away down the park trail, the boys now running ahead, their new books safe under their arms. Maya turned once, waving briefly, a gesture that he interpreted as encouraging. Sitting on the bench again, alone with his thoughts, Liam felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a pure emotion, not diluted by calculations of advantages or disadvantages. He pulled out his phone to check messages and, without thinking, opened the banking app. There was a pending notification, an alert for an unusual transaction. Frowning, he tapped on the notification. The company was facing a significant drop in its stock after rumors of tax irregularities came to light last Friday, a problem that his CFO had desperately tried to communicate while Liam was distracted with thoughts about the meeting with the triplets. The company's market value had fallen by 18% in a single trading day. At any other time, this news would have been devastating, provoking an immediate response. Frantic calls, emergency meetings, damage control strategies. But at that moment, sitting on a park bench with his heart full of recent memories, Liam found that he couldn't feel the usual panic. The perspective had changed, subtly, but undeniably. Putting his phone away without responding to the dozens of urgent messages, he walked slowly to the car, trying to organize his thoughts. In just 2 weeks, the foundation of his carefully built life had been completely shaken. His wife was temporarily away, questioning the future of their marriage. His once solid company was facing an unexpected financial crisis, and now there were 3 small human beings in his life, his children, who barely knew him, but who had already awakened in him emotions he had never imagined possible. When he started the car, Liam made a decision that would have been unthinkable for the man he was just 2 weeks before. The crisis at the company would have to wait until tomorrow. Today, he needed to process what he had just experienced. He needed to understand what it meant to be a father, not just biologically, but in every way that mattered. Driving home, the empty mansion that now seemed too big, too cold, without Khloe's presence, Liam felt simultaneously lost and found. Lost because all the markers that defined his identity were in flux. Found because, for the first time in a long time, he was following something deeper than ambition or social expectations. In the silence of the house, he took off his shoes and lay down on the sofa, closing his eyes. The images of the boys danced in his mind. Oliver enthusiastically explaining about dinosaurs, Jack pointing to illustrations of planets, Noah watching them silently with eyes that reflected his own. His children. The thought was still surreal, foreign, but also undeniably true. His phone rang again, his vice president no doubt trying to reach him to discuss the imminent crisis. Liam silenced the device. Tomorrow, he would face the professional consequences of his recent neglect. Tomorrow, he would regain control of his troubled company. Tomorrow, he would think about what to say to Khloe when she returned. But today Today, he would allow the emotions he had suppressed for so long to finally emerge in a flood of regret, hope, and newly discovered possibilities. A path to redemption. The invitation to the triplets' birthday arrived in a colorful envelope decorated with stars and planets. The work of the children themselves, the note attached by Maya explained. Liam felt his heart race as he read the words written in a childish and regular handwriting. Please come to our party, Oliver, Jack, and Noah. In the 5 months since that first meeting in the park, his relationship with the boys had evolved slowly, with care. Bi-weekly meetings in the park, a visit to the planetarium with Jack, an afternoon at the dinosaur museum with Oliver, even a quiet reading session with Noah, the most reserved of the three. Small steps, precious moments that Liam treasured. They really want me to go? He asked Khloe, who was watching his reaction with attentive eyes. Why the surprise? She replied. You're their father. The relationship between Khloe and the triplets had been initially awkward, marked by polite smiles and superficial conversations. But with time, something unexpected began to blossom. It was Noah, surprisingly, who first connected with her, fascinated by her knowledge of architecture. Soon they were drawing imaginary structures, impossible bridges, castles in the air together. I guess that means we're going, Khloe commented, picking up the invitation to examine it. Alex will be there. Madge. Yes, it's their house after all. Liam still felt a pang of discomfort at the thought of the man who, for all intents and purposes, was more of a father to his children than he was. But he had developed a reluctant respect for Alex, for his integrity, his dedication to the boys, his willingness to share, even if cautiously. The birthday party was held in the backyard of the modest but cozy house where Maya lived with Alex and the triplets. A house full of books, toys, and children's art on the walls. A real home, not a magazine residence like the mansion where Liam and Khloe lived. Watching the boys run among the guests, laughing and playing under the late afternoon sun, Liam felt a mixture of joy and sorrow. Joy for being there, for being a part of this moment. Sorrow for the many lost moments, for the 5 years of voluntary absence. Thank you for coming, Maya said, approaching with 2 glasses of lemonade. It means a lot to them. Thank you for inviting me, Liam replied, accepting the drink. Maya, I wanted to ask you something. My lawyer told me that you refused all my offers to increase child support. Why? Maya smiled. A calm smile that reflected a wisdom that Liam was just beginning to understand. Because money wasn't what they needed from you, Liam. It never was. The simplicity of that answer hit him like a revelation. For years, he had equated parental responsibility with financial support. A convenient equation that allowed him to maintain emotional distance while fulfilling legal obligations. Maya had understood long before him that what her children really needed was not robust bank accounts, but presence, time, connection. Later, during the cake cutting, Liam watched as Alex helped Noah hold the knife. How he whispered words of encouragement in the boy's ear. How his face lit up with genuine pride when the triplets blew out the candles together. It was fatherhood in its purest form, not based on DNA or obligation, but on consistent, daily, unconditional love. You're lucky, Liam said to Maya when they had a moment alone. He's a good man, a good father. He is, she agreed without triumphalism, just acknowledging the truth. But they have room in their hearts for both of you, you know? Children have an incredible capacity to love. The weeks that followed brought new complications and developments. Liam's company finally stabilized after the crisis, although with a reduced market value. His relationship with Khloe found a new balance, more honest, more vulnerable, although the scars of disappointment were still visible. And then there was his mother. The breakup with Eleanor had been painful, but necessary. A line in the sand that Liam needed to draw to define the kind of man, the kind of father he wanted to be. For months, they maintained only formal contact, brief calls on important dates. It was Khloe who surprisingly suggested a reconciliation. "She's your mother, Liam, despite everything. And she's getting older, more fragile. She manipulated my life, lied to me about Maya, made me abandon my own children." "Yes," Khloe agreed. "And that was terrible, unforgivable, maybe. But forgiveness isn't for her. It's for you. To move on. Completely." That's how, almost 11 months after the chance meeting at the amusement park, Liam arranged a lunch at his mother's favorite restaurant. Neutral ground, where they could, perhaps, find some path to reconciliation. What he didn't expect was to find not only Eleanor waiting for him, but Maya, Alex, and the triplets as well. "What is this?" he asked Khloe, who squeezed his hand in response. "A surprise. Your mother asked to meet her grandchildren." Eleanor looked smaller somehow, less imposing than Liam remembered. Her eyes, normally cold and calculating, now showed a vulnerability he had rarely witnessed. "Hello, Liam," she said, her voice betraying nervousness. "I hope you don't mind this unexpected arrangement." The lunch started awkwardly, with artificial conversations and tense silences. The boys, feeling the strange atmosphere, were unusually quiet, watching the adults with attentive eyes. It was when dessert was served that Eleanor finally spoke, her voice more fragile than Liam had ever heard. "I would like to apologize," she said, looking first at Maya, "for interfering in your lives in such a destructive way, for lying, for prioritizing status and appearances over my son's happiness and my grandchildren's well-being." Turning to Liam, she continued, "And to you, my son, for encouraging you to become the kind of man who abandons his responsibilities, who sees relationships as transactions. I was wrong, so terribly wrong." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with the weight of years of resentment, of suppressed pain, of lost opportunities. Liam felt a lump in his throat, unable to formulate a response. It was Noah, surprisingly, who broke the silence. "Are you our grandma?" he asked, looking at Eleanor with childish curiosity. A shaky smile appeared on the elderly woman's face. "I am, dear, although I don't deserve that title yet. We have 3 grandmas now," Oliver observed pragmatically. "Alex's mom, Mama, Ami's mom, and you." 3 grandmas, Eleanor repeated, unexpected tears shining in her normally dry eyes. "How lucky you are." Something broke at that moment, not dramatically, but like thin ice melting under the spring sun. Liam saw his mother not as the manipulative and controlling figure she had always been, but as an elderly woman, confronting the mistakes of a lifetime, seeking redemption while there was still time. "I'm trying to be a better man than I was," Liam said, finally finding his voice. "A better father than the one I had as an example. It's not easy, and I make mistakes every day. But I'm trying." The words were not directed only at his mother, but at everyone at the table, at Maya, for protecting the children while allowing him to slowly enter their lives. At Alex, for his generosity in sharing the fatherhood he had taken on alone for so long. At Khloe, for her strength in staying and trying to rebuild something new from the ashes of what they had lost. And at the boys, for their incredible ability to love without judgment, to accept without conditions. A full year had passed when Liam suggested a trip to the same amusement park where it had all started. Everyone agreed. Maya and Alex, Khloe, the triplets, even Eleanor, who now spent entire afternoons with her grandchildren, making up for lost time with stories and homemade cookies. Under the same sunny sky, in the same colorful and noisy setting, Liam watched his expanded family. Not perfect, still marked by scars from the past, but genuine in its imperfection. Noah held his right hand, while Khloe carried a laughing Oliver on her shoulders. Jack ran ahead with Alex, while Maya and Eleanor talked behind them, sharing stories about the boys' most recent mischief. "Dad?" Noah called, pulling his hand for attention. "Are you happy?" Liam crouched down to be at his son's height, looking into the eyes that were mirrors of his own. "I am, son. Very happy." "Me too," the boy replied with simplicity, before running to catch up with his brothers. Liam remained there for a moment, watching the people who, through pain and forgiveness, through difficult choices and necessary concessions, had become his family. A family that did not follow traditional definitions or social expectations, but that was sustained by something stronger than conventions. Imperfect, but persistent love. And at that moment, under the sun of a Sunday afternoon, identical to the one that had changed his life a year earlier, Liam finally understood the true meaning of fatherhood, of family, of success, not measured in professional achievements or carefully maintained appearances, but in the ability to love and be loved, to make mistakes and try again, to build bridges where there were once only abysses,